The galaxy had grown quiet over the last few decades, or at least that was what humans believed. Out beyond the outer rim, in a region of space marked by dying stars and swirling nebulae, a desperate signal pierced the silence. The distress call was unlike anything the United Earth Fleet had ever received. It came from the Xipherians, an alien race known for their peaceful nature, brilliant technology, and the shimmering cities that floated above the surface of their planet. Now, their voices trembled with fear, pleading for help. Captain Jackson Hale sat in the command chair aboard the flagship Resolute, listening to the Xipherian communication with a frown. His hands rested lightly on the armrests, but his mind raced. The Xipherians spoke of a threat no one had fully faced before. A species called the Deathworlders had appeared in their system, leaving entire planets as burnt wastelands and annihilated colonies. Their ships were massive, their soldiers seemingly indestructible, and their reputation spread terror wherever they went. Jackson leaned forward and adjusted the controls, replaying the transmission. "This is not just another pirate raid," he said to his first officer, Lieutenant Mira Santos. "The Xipherians wouldn't send a call like this unless it was the real deal." Mira studied the readouts on the screen, her dark eyes scanning the star maps that indicated areas of destruction. "They've already lost half their fleet and most of their outer colonies. If the Deathworlders reach the core cities, there won't be anything left." Jackson's jaw tightened. Humanity had faced threats before, but none like this. The Deathworlders were described in old interstellar records as nearly unstoppable. Planets that resisted fell quickly, and those that surrendered often did not survive in any meaningful sense. Yet, in the midst of despair, there was hope. Humans had a unique strength. They adapted. They improvised. They survived. The Fleet Council on Earth debated the risks. Some argued it was too dangerous to intervene. Humanity had its own systems to protect, and sending fleets to a distant galaxy could stretch resources dangerously thin. Others, like Jackson, saw it differently. "We cannot turn away when a civilization cries out for help," he said. "And we have skills, technology, and creativity that the Deathworlders haven't faced yet. If we wait, it might already be too late." Finally, the Council agreed. A human fleet would respond, led by Jackson Hale and the Resolute. Preparations were swift. Supplies were loaded, weapons checked, and every pilot briefed. As the fleet approached Xipherian space, the full scope of the Deathworlder threat became clear. Scorched planets floated like blackened moons in the void. Entire spaceports were gone, leaving only charred remnants. The human sensors detected advanced war machines, patrolling the outskirts fast, deadly, and heavily armored. Jackson's crew worked tirelessly, scanning for any sign of survivors. When they found groups of Xipherians hiding in underground bunkers, the humans were struck by their fragility. These aliens were slender, almost ethereal, with translucent skin that seemed to glow faintly in the dark. They were brilliant scientists and engineers, but ill-prepared for combat. Their weapons were energy-based, but lacked the firepower to face the Deathworlders head-on. When the Xipherian leaders finally met the humans, they were both terrified and relieved. A female scientist named Lyra approached Jackson with a trembling bow. "Our people, we do not know how much longer we can survive," she said softly. "The Deathworlders, they destroy everything. They do not take prisoners. If you cannot help, then we are finished." Jackson looked at her, feeling the weight of the moment. He had faced danger before, but this was different. This was a race that thrived on destruction, facing which required more than courage. It required strategy, resilience, and a willingness to risk everything. "We will help," he said firmly. "But you must trust us and follow our guidance. Together, we might be able to stop them." The Xipherians nodded, hope flickering in their eyes for the first time in days. Humans immediately began sharing defensive plans, helping the Xipherians set up energy shields around key cities and vital infrastructure. They mapped the terrain and pointed out choke points where the Deathworlders' massive ships could be slowed or trapped. Every action, every suggestion, relied on human adaptability and ingenuity. As night fell over Xipherian cities, the human crew observed the alien world from orbit. The glowing towers, the canals of energy, and the floating platforms all seemed fragile against the looming threat. Yet Jackson noticed something else: determination. Humans had brought not just weapons but courage and planning. He could see that the Xipherians were beginning to believe that maybe, just maybe, survival was possible. Suddenly, the sensors picked up movement on the outer rim. Small Deathworlder scout ships, black and jagged, were entering Xipherian space. The humans mobilized immediately. Fighters were launched to intercept them, while larger ships prepared for battle maneuvers. The scouts were fast, aggressive, and intelligent in their attacks, testing human tactics at every turn. Jackson watched the battle unfold on the view screen. The humans were outnumbered, but they adapted quickly. Using the asteroid belts near the planet as cover, the fleet launched surprise attacks that disabled several enemy vessels. The Xipherians cheered from the command center, watching as humans showed them that even the strongest enemy could be challenged with wit and courage. After hours of engagement, the human fleet pulled back, avoiding the full Deathworlder fleet while leaving enough of a message. Humans were now in this fight, and they were not afraid. Jackson turned to Mira, his eyes reflecting both exhaustion and resolve. "This is only the beginning," he said. "They've faced species that gave up long ago. They've never faced humans." The Xipherians looked at the humans with awe. For the first time, they dared to hope. And Jackson knew that humanity had just taken its first step in a battle that would define the galaxy. Above, the stars stretched endlessly, full of danger and opportunity. The Deathworlders were out there, waiting. But now, the humans were too, and they would not back down. The morning light of Xipherian cities shimmered faintly through the thin atmosphere as Captain Jackson Hale and his crew prepared for the next phase of their mission. The previous day's skirmish had shown them the Deathworlders were relentless and clever, but it had also revealed a weakness. They underestimated humans. Even the Xipherians, who had watched countless alien fleets fall, were amazed at how quickly the humans adapted, turning the environment itself into a weapon. Jackson walked through the corridors of the Resolute, checking on his officers. Lieutenant Mira Santos was reviewing tactical maps with the pilots, highlighting zones where asteroids, energy currents, and dense nebulae could hide ships or funnel enemy forces into ambushes. "They think strength alone wins battles," she said, pointing to the projected paths of the incoming Deathworlder fleet. "They haven't faced anyone like us before. We can use that." Jackson nodded, his mind already calculating multiple possibilities. "We'll hit their scouts again. But this time, we lure them closer to the planet. Let's see how they handle terrain they can't dominate." Meanwhile, below on the surface, the Xipherians were moving quickly. Engineers, scientists, and civilians worked together to fortify the cities. Energy shields glimmered around key structures, and communication relays were reinforced. Lyra, the lead scientist, coordinated the effort. Her calm demeanor inspiring confidence among her people. She had never commanded defense operations before, but with humans guiding her, she felt a new sense of purpose. The first wave of Deathworlder ships appeared near the outer orbital ring, dark and jagged against the backdrop of stars. Sensors detected dozens of small craft, each built for speed and attack precision. The humans launched interceptors immediately. Fighters darted between asteroid clusters, weaving around debris and using sudden bursts of energy to confuse their pursuers. The Deathworlder ships were fast, firing plasma bursts that could shred conventional hulls in seconds. But the humans were clever. They used unpredictable maneuvers, splitting into smaller groups and feinting attacks. One squadron, led by Lieutenant Rian Torres, ambushed a patrol by diving into a dense nebula cloud, disappearing from sensors before striking the enemy from behind. Explosions lit up the void as enemy vessels were destroyed or disabled. Jackson watched the battle from the command deck, a sense of pride building. Humanity's strength was not in brute force, but in creativity and resilience. Every move was calculated, yet flexible, and it worked. The Xipherians observed from their city control centers, their fear slowly replaced with admiration. For the first time, they dared to imagine survival. By midday, the humans had driven back the first wave. But the Deathworlders were learning quickly. Their next approach was more organized, avoiding predictable paths and using decoys to confuse human sensors. Jackson realized they needed a new strategy. He called a council with his top officers. "They're fast learners," he said. "We can't just react. We need to control the battlefield." Using Xipherian terrain knowledge, they planned a trap. Asteroid belts would act as natural funnels, while magnetic storms would interfere with the Deathworlders' targeting systems. The humans would appear weak, retreating in controlled patterns, drawing the enemy deeper into zones where ambushes waited. It was risky, but it was the best chance to gain an advantage. When the next wave arrived, the plan was set into motion. Human ships feigned retreat, leading the Deathworlders into the asteroid trap. As the enemy fleet followed, hidden human interceptors attacked from unexpected angles, striking critical engines and causing confusion. The Xipherians activated energy nets in space, designed to entangle or slow enemy ships. Chaos spread through the Deathworlder ranks. Amid the battle, a small human squadron noticed civilians trapped in a collapsing transport station on one of the moons. Captain Jackson ordered an immediate rescue operation. Ships weaved through the chaos, dodging enemy fire, and successfully evacuated hundreds of Xipherians. The bravery inspired those who witnessed it. Even in the middle of an overwhelming fight, humans placed value on life, something the Deathworlders seemed incapable of understanding. The Deathworlders, frustrated and disoriented, retreated temporarily. Their ships regrouped at a distance, studying human tactics with what seemed like a mixture of curiosity and anger. Jackson knew the fight was far from over. The enemy was intelligent, adaptive, and brutal, but so were humans. If anything, the first victories only proved that with strategy and courage, they could survive against impossible odds. Back on the planet, Lyra and her team worked with humans to improve the city defenses. Humans taught Xipherians ways to integrate their energy shields with mobile platforms, creating zones where enemy ships could be trapped or slowed. Civilians contributed in small but meaningful ways, placing power nodes and recalibrating sensors under human supervision. The teamwork created a bond between species, a sense of unity against a common threat. Even in these moments of cooperation, there was a quiet fear. Reports indicated that the Deathworlders were mobilizing their main fleet. Hundreds of massive ships were traveling through uncharted space, moving with precision and speed that hinted at devastating power. Jackson gathered his officers and laid out a plan. "We've seen what they can do in small numbers. When the main fleet arrives, it will be unlike anything we've faced. But we will adapt. We always do." As night fell over Xipherian cities, the humans and aliens took a brief moment to breathe. Fires from previous skirmishes reflected off the surface, painting the skies with orange and red hues. The Xipherians had hope, but Jackson knew it was fragile. The Deathworlders were relentless. They did not forgive mistakes or weakness. Humanity's task was not just to fight, but to inspire, to show the Xipherians that survival was possible. In the observation deck of the Resolute, Jackson looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Deathworlder main fleet was approaching. Its size and power were unknown, but he did not doubt it would be dangerous. Yet, he also knew humans had something no other species could match: the ability to see possibilities where others saw hopelessness, to create opportunities from chaos, and to stand firm even when defeat seemed inevitable. He turned to Mira, who stood beside him, watching the planet below. "We've won small battles," he said, "but the real test is coming. We need to be ready. Every move counts." Mira nodded, determination clear in her expression. "Then we'll be ready. We've shown them what humans can do. The Deathworlders won't expect what's coming next." Below, Zypherian civilians whispered among themselves, hope spreading quietly through their cities. The humans had arrived, and they were not just fighters, they were teachers, protectors, and symbols of courage. The Deathworlders had unleashed terror across the stars. But humanity had begun to prove that even the most fearsome enemy could be challenged with intelligence, bravery, and the will to survive. The next battle would test everything. But one truth was clear. Humans had arrived, and they would not retreat. The Deathworlders had underestimated them, and that mistake might just save a civilization. The calm of Zypherian space shattered when sensors picked up the first signals of the Deathworlders' main fleet. Hundreds of massive, jagged warships moved with mechanical precision through the void, their dark hulls reflecting the light of distant stars. Captain Jackson Hale felt the familiar weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. This was not a scout mission, not a skirmish. This was the full force of a species that had destroyed countless worlds. Jackson gathered his officers on the command deck. Lieutenant Mira Santos, eyes sharp and calculating, pointed to the display. "They're larger than anything we've seen before. And their formations. It's almost as if they know exactly how we'll respond." Jackson's jaw tightened. "That's why we need to be unpredictable. Conventional tactics won't work. We have to fight smart, not just hard." Below in the Zypherian cities, panic rippled through the streets. Civilians fled to shelters, and engineers worked tirelessly to reinforce energy shields. Lyra coordinated efforts with human officers, ensuring that key areas were protected. "This is it," she whispered to herself. "The moment that decides whether we survive or perish." The first wave of the Deathworlder main fleet entered orbit with a roar that seemed to shake the very atmosphere. Massive cannons glowed ominously, ready to obliterate anything in sight. Jackson gave the order to deploy interceptors. Human and Zypherian fighters launched simultaneously, darting through space like swarms of determined wasps. The Deathworlders fired relentlessly, plasma streams tearing through the void, but the humans had learned to adapt. They used every advantage the environment offered. Asteroid fields, gravitational anomalies, and nebula clouds became shields and traps. Human pilots led Deathworlder ships into asteroid belts, forcing collisions or disabling engines. Zypherian energy nets ensnared unsuspecting vessels, leaving them vulnerable to targeted attacks. The fleet moved with coordination and flexibility that no enemy had seen before. Despite the successes, the Deathworlders' power was overwhelming. Their massive ships began bombarding cities with energy beams capable of leveling entire districts. Panic spread as fires erupted and buildings crumbled. Jackson ordered an immediate counterstrike, directing human frigates to draw fire away from civilian areas while smaller strike teams targeted enemy weak points. Amid the chaos, a distress signal came from a Zypherian transport trapped between two enemy cruisers. Hundreds of civilians were on board, and time was running out. Jackson made a snap decision. "Prepare the rescue squadron," he ordered. "We're not leaving anyone behind." A team of human pilots, including Lieutenant Rian Torres, navigated through the intense battle. They weaved between plasma fire and debris, using rapid maneuvers to avoid detection. With careful precision, they reached the transport, attached tractor beams, and began towing it to safety. The Deathworlders noticed too late, and the squadron slipped away before they could retaliate. The operation saved hundreds of lives and proved again that humans were not only brave but remarkably resourceful. As the battle raged on, the Xipherians gained confidence. Their militias, once hesitant and unsure, now fought alongside humans. They operated energy turrets, deployed traps, and relayed intelligence. Jackson watched from the bridge as two species, so different in origin, worked together seamlessly. Humanity's presence had transformed despair into hope, but even with strategy and courage, the Deathworlders were relentless. They adapted quickly, learning from every attack, and their larger ships began using coordinated strikes to overwhelm smaller human vessels. Casualties mounted, and Jackson realized that they needed a more daring approach to turn the tide. He called a tactical meeting with Mira and his top officers. "We've seen what they can do. They learn fast. If we wait for them to make mistakes, we'll lose. We have to take the fight directly to them." Using Xipherian intelligence, Jackson identified a vulnerability. A critical control node within the largest Deathworlder ship. If it could be disabled, the entire fleet's coordination might falter. It was a high-risk operation. A small strike team would infiltrate the enemy flagship, bypassing defenses to sabotage the control node. Failure meant certain death, but success could change the course of the war. The team prepared meticulously. Human engineers modified stealth drones to bypass Deathworlder sensors, and pilots trained for evasive maneuvers in tight spaces. Lyra provided detailed schematics of Xipherian energy shields that could be adapted to protect the team during the infiltration. Every detail mattered. As night fell over the planet, the operation began. The small strike team approached the Deathworlder flagship under cover of asteroid belts and nebula interference. Jackson watched every movement on the display, feeling a mix of anxiety and hope. The team dodged patrols, navigated labyrinthine corridors, and used advanced stealth technology to remain undetected. Finally, they reached the control node. Using synchronized precision, they deployed hacking devices and energy disruptors. The massive vessel shuddered as systems flickered and alarms blared. Coordination across the Deathworlder fleet faltered almost immediately. Ships collided, firepower misfired, and formations broke apart. Jackson seized the opportunity. Human and Xipherian fleets launched a massive counterattack, striking disorganized enemy ships from all directions. The Deathworlders, so used to fear and submission from other species, were thrown into chaos. What was once an unstoppable force now struggled to regroup. On the planet, civilians watched the sky filled with fire and energy, realizing that survival was possible. The human-led strategy, combined with Xipherian courage, had turned what seemed like inevitable defeat into a chance for victory. After hours of intense fighting, the Deathworlders withdrew temporarily, regrouping at the edge of the system. Human ships, though battered, remained in formation, ready for the next encounter. Jackson knew this was only the beginning. But humanity had proven something critical. Intelligence, courage, and adaptability could overcome even the deadliest opponents. In the quiet that followed, Jackson stood on the bridge, gazing at the stars. "We've shown them we're not prey," he said softly. "We've shown them we can fight and win. And we've given the Xipherians hope." Mira placed a hand on his shoulder. "This is just the start. They'll return, stronger and smarter. But so will we. Humanity doesn't give up." Below, Xipherian engineers and civilians worked through the night to repair damages and strengthen defenses. For the first time in weeks, laughter and conversation returned to the streets. The humans had not only fought, they had inspired. Somewhere in the void, the Deathworlders regrouped, aware that they had underestimated this strange new species. They had faced countless civilizations, but humans were unlike any they had encountered before. Clever, brave, and unyielding, humanity had become a force to be reckoned with. The stars stretched endlessly, holding danger and opportunity alike. Jackson knew the next battle would be harder, but humanity's resolve had been tested and proven. The Deathworlders had unleashed their fleet, but they had not broken the spirit of humans or Zypherians, and that was a power no enemy could destroy. The calm, after the chaos, was fragile. Zypherian space still smoldered from the first encounter with the Deathworlder fleet, and Captain Jackson Hale knew that the enemy was observing, learning, and preparing. The humans had proven they could survive against impossible odds, but survival alone would not win this war. To defeat the Deathworlders, they needed a plan that no enemy could predict. Jackson gathered his senior officers in the command room of the Resolute. Lieutenant Mira Santos spread out star maps and highlighted every observed movement of the Deathworlder fleet. "They're regrouping near the outer rim," she said. "Their patterns are deliberate. They've noticed the infiltration of their flagship and the chaos it caused. They will strike harder this time." Jackson nodded, his expression calm but resolute. "Then we give them something unexpected. We take the fight to them, where they think they are strongest, and we turn their strength into a weakness." The humans had discovered a pattern in the Deathworlders' command network. Each fleet relied on central nodes for coordination, linking ships across vast distances. If one node failed, communication faltered. Jackson realized that this vulnerability could change the war's outcome. A direct strike against the main fleet's control system could disable their coordination, leaving them open to attack. It was risky, but the reward was enormous. Using Zypherian intelligence and human technology, the team developed a daring plan. A small strike force would infiltrate the Deathworlder command ship, using modified stealth drones and advanced navigation systems. Meanwhile, the human fleet would engage the enemy, distracting them and drawing attention away from the strike team. Every movement had to be precise. Any misstep could mean total annihilation. The infiltration team, led by Lieutenant Rian Torres, prepared for the mission. Pilots reviewed every detail of the command ship's layout, provided by Zypherian sensors. Engineers adapted energy shields to mask the team's presence, while communications specialists ensured they could relay information back to the fleet without being detected. Tension ran high, but determination was stronger. This mission required courage, intelligence, and teamwork in equal measure. As the team approached the massive Deathworlder vessel, its hull loomed like a black mountain against the stars. The ship was larger than any human vessel and bristling with weaponry. Sensors scanned constantly, looking for signs of intrusion. Rian's squadron maneuvered carefully, using asteroid fields and nebula clouds as cover. Every decision had to be precise. Even the smallest error could be fatal. Inside the ship, the squad moved silently, deploying drones to disable security systems and create safe paths. The corridors were alien and intimidating, lined with strange machinery and humming with energy. The team relied on training and ingenuity, bypassing traps and avoiding patrols. They reached the control node, a massive structure glowing with intricate energy circuits. With synchronized precision, the humans began to deploy hacking devices and energy disruptors. Sparks flew, and alarms blared as systems began to fail. The Deathworlders responded immediately, attempting to isolate the breach. But the humans had anticipated their moves. Every countermeasure was neutralized, and within minutes, the central node began to collapse. Communication across the Deathworlder fleet faltered. Outside, Jackson commanded the human fleet with renewed energy. Enemy ships lost coordination, crashing into one another, or failing to respond to tactical commands. Human and Zypherian vessels exploited the chaos, striking with precision. Asteroids and energy nets trapped enemy ships, and fighters attacked from unexpected angles. The Deathworlders, once seemingly invincible, were now disoriented and vulnerable. On the planet below, Zypherian citizens watched in awe as the battle unfolded in orbit. Fires burned from earlier skirmishes, but hope had returned. Civilians cheered as human ships led daring strikes, rescuing trapped populations and disabling enemy installations. For the first time, They realized that survival was possible, and that humans could inspire courage even in the darkest moments. The Deathworlders attempted to regroup, but the loss of their command node made coordination nearly impossible. Jackson knew this was the moment to strike decisively. He ordered the fleet to focus on the largest ships, using concentrated fire and careful maneuvers to disable their engines and weapons. Smaller squads attacked from multiple directions, exploiting weaknesses exposed by the disrupted command network. Lieutenant Mira Santos coordinated with Zypherian engineers to amplify energy shields around human ships. This allowed strike teams to engage enemy vessels closely, without fear of destruction. Each move was calculated, relying on strategy, ingenuity, and adaptability, the very traits that defined humanity. Inside the Deathworlder flagship, chaos reigned. Officers struggled to regain control, but systems continued to fail. Human sabotage had turned their strength into weakness. Crew members were forced to abandon positions as energy surges damaged internal systems. The once feared vessel now teetered on the edge of destruction. After hours of coordinated attacks, the Deathworlder fleet began to retreat. Ships fled toward the outer rim, disorganized and demoralized. The human and Zypherian forces had achieved the impossible. They had defeated the enemy's main fleet, at least temporarily, and safeguarded the planet below. Cheers erupted aboard the Resolute, but Jackson remained focused. The Deathworlders were formidable, and their retreat was only temporary. The war was far from over. On the ground, Zypherian civilians celebrated cautiously, repairing their cities and reinforcing defenses. Lyra worked with human engineers to establish new protective measures, integrating advanced energy shields and rapid communication networks. The collaboration between species had grown stronger, united by shared struggle and trust. Jackson stood on the observation deck, gazing at the stars where the Deathworlder fleet had vanished. "We've done what no one thought possible," he said softly. "We've shown them humans are not to be underestimated. But this is only the beginning. They will return, and we must be ready." Mira placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "They will come back stronger, but so will we. Every challenge only makes us smarter, faster, and more determined. Humanity never quits." Below, the Zypherians continued their work, inspired by the courage and ingenuity of humans. The battle had been won, but the war was not over. Yet for the first time, both humans and Zypherians dared to hope. They had faced the deadliest force in the galaxy and survived, not through brute strength alone, but through intelligence, courage, and the willingness to fight for what was right. In the void of space, the retreating Deathworlders regrouped, aware of their vulnerability. They had underestimated the humans, a species that refused to yield and thrived under impossible odds. Their next encounter would be critical. But humanity had already proven something important. They could stand against any foe, adapt to any challenge, and turn despair into victory. The stars stretched endlessly, full of danger and opportunity. The galaxy had witnessed the first great triumph of humanity beyond their home systems. And Captain Jackson Hale knew that when the next battle came, humans would be ready, as they always were, to face the impossible and survive. The calm that followed the Deathworlder fleet's retreat was deceptive. Captain Jackson Hale knew better than anyone that the enemy would return, and likely with even greater force. The infiltration of their command node had dealt a significant blow, but it had also announced humanity as a force to be reckoned with. Across the galaxy, whispers of human courage and ingenuity spread, reaching allies and enemies alike. On the surface of Zypherian cities, engineers and civilians worked tirelessly, repairing damage and strengthening defenses. Energy shields now covered vital areas, and mobile platforms were ready to respond to any threat. The Zypherians, once fragile and fearful, had grown confident under human guidance. They trained rapidly, learning human tactics and applying them to their own technology. Lyra supervised every detail, her mind a blend of science and strategy. Jackson convened his officers in the command room of the Resolute. "The Deathworlders are retreating," he said, voice calm but firm. "But this is not a victory. They will come back. And, likely, with more ships. We need a strategy that guarantees we can stop them before they reach the core of this system." Lieutenant Mira Santos studied the star maps, highlighting choke points and natural hazards. "We can use the terrain to our advantage again. They underestimate anything humans can adapt. If we lure them into the asteroid belts and plasma storms near the outer colonies, we can hit them hard while minimizing our losses." Jackson nodded. "We also need a small strike team ready. The first infiltration worked because we were daring and precise. If we can hit their central systems again, this time permanently, we might force a full retreat." As the humans and Xipherians prepared, scouts reported unusual activity in deep space. The Deathworlders were massing a fleet, even larger than before, their ships bristling with weapons and armored to withstand conventional attacks. But Jackson felt no fear. He had learned the truth of humanity. Courage, adaptability, and intelligence could bend the impossible into possibility. When the fleet finally appeared near the outer colonies, the human and Xipherian forces were ready. Fighters launched immediately, using every advantage of terrain and technology. Asteroid belts became traps, and plasma storms interfered with enemy targeting. The Deathworlders, despite their numbers, struggled to respond to the unexpected maneuvers. Human pilots led daring strikes, drawing enemy ships into zones where Xipherian energy nets immobilized them. Explosions lit the void as the fleet gained the upper hand. Civilians, who had been evacuated to safer zones, watched the battle with a mix of awe and hope. The humans were not only fighting, they were showing everyone that even the deadliest enemy could be challenged. Meanwhile, the infiltration team prepared to board the largest Deathworlder ship. Lieutenant Rian Torres and his squad approached under cover of the chaos. Their stealth drones avoided detection, weaving between debris and enemy patrols. Inside, they navigated unfamiliar corridors, disabling security systems and avoiding heavily armed soldiers. Every movement required precision and courage. Finally, they reached the heart of the enemy vessel, where the central control system pulsed with energy. Using advanced hacking tools and energy disruptors, the team worked quickly. Sparks flew as the system overloaded, sending shockwaves through the Deathworlder fleet. Communication faltered, weapons misfired, and formations collapsed. Ships collided, and chaos spread across the enemy lines. Jackson seized the opportunity. Human and Xipherian fleets coordinated precise strikes against disorganized enemy vessels. Smaller human ships attacked from unpredictable angles, while Xipherian energy shields provided cover for critical operations. The Deathworlders, once the most feared force in the galaxy, struggled to maintain control. On the surface, civilians cheered as enemy ships were disabled or destroyed. Fires from previous attacks were extinguished, and for the first time, hope replaced fear. The combined human-Xipherian effort had transformed a hopeless situation into a moment of triumph. Humanity's ingenuity, courage, and determination had turned the tide. The Deathworlders attempted a final counterattack, but it was disorganized and weak. Human fighters intercepted them before they could reach the cities, and the Xipherian militia targeted any remaining threats. One by one, the enemy ships were disabled or forced to retreat. Captain Jackson knew this would likely be the last major engagement in this system. The Deathworlders, humiliated and disrupted, had no choice but to withdraw to their own territory. In the aftermath, Jackson addressed his officers and the Xipherian leaders. "We have faced what many thought impossible," he said. "The Deathworlders are retreating. But our mission is more than survival. We have proven that courage, intelligence, and determination can overcome even the greatest threats. This is the true strength of humanity." Lyra stepped forward, her voice full of gratitude. "Your people have saved us all. You have shown that even the most hopeless situations can be changed with courage and wisdom. We owe you more than we can say." Jackson shook his head. "We did this together. Humans, Zypherians, everyone who refused to give up. That is what matters. We fight not for glory, but for life, for hope, for what is right." The Zypherians began to rebuild, stronger and more confident than ever. They integrated human strategies into their own defense systems, creating a permanent alliance with Earth. Knowledge, technology, and culture were shared, strengthening bonds that would last across generations. Humanity had not only survived, they had inspired and transformed an entire civilization. As the human fleet departed, Jackson stood on the observation deck, looking at the stars. He thought of the Deathworlders, lurking in distant space, and knew they would return someday. But he also knew something greater. Humans had proven their worth. They could face the impossible, adapt to any challenge, and protect those who could not defend themselves. That was a power no enemy could take away. Mira joined him, her expression calm but resolute. "We've done what others thought impossible," she said. "We've saved a civilization, and we've shown the galaxy what humans are capable of." Jackson nodded. "And we will continue to show them. Humanity is not just a survivor. We are a force to be reckoned with, a species that can rise above any danger and protect what is right." Below, the Zypherians celebrated quietly but joyfully. Their people had survived, their cities had been protected, and their hope for the future was stronger than ever. Humanity had come into their lives not only as warriors, but as teachers, protectors, and allies. In the vast expanse of the galaxy, stars stretched endlessly, full of challenges and opportunities. Humanity had proven itself against the deadliest enemy known. Not through sheer strength alone, but through intelligence, courage, and the determination to do what was right. The universe had witnessed the rise of a species that could face any threat, adapt to any situation, and inspire hope even in the darkest moments. And for Captain Jackson Hale, standing on the bridge of the Resolute, looking at the distant stars, that was the greatest victory of all. Humanity had arrived, and the galaxy would never underestimate it again.